I'll be sharing with you some of the reasons why a lot of people drop out of flight school. This is a very difficult one for me because I have seen it, I've experienced it as an instructor, and it's always a difficult one just to see that somebody, that had so much potential or had so much interest and zeal when they first started, all of a sudden just drop out and they lose interest completely. Why is this a very sensitive one? Because I know that a lot of you that watch my video are either planning to start training or either started training already. So I hope that you are able to glean some information from this video and understand that flight training is not easy. Forget about the money, forget about the fact that it can be scary sometimes, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of fear in people that dissuade them from actually pursuing this field. I want you to understand that it's not an easy piece of cake. So you have to be mentally prepared to get into it. So if you're new here, my name is Steven, and on this channel we talk about aviation, and I hope that you will stick around by subscribing, and of course don't forget to like this video. It really goes a long way. I have to be honest with you, getting those likes is very important because it will help to push this video to other people, and also it will help me to know what you guys find informative so that I can actually do more. It's not easy to just sit in my own world and try to pick up topics. So I hope that you guys understand that and you do me a favor by liking this video. So let's get into it. One of the biggest ones, which is not the biggest one, I'm still going to cover it towards the end, but one of the biggest reasons why people drop out is, let's just talk about it, money. It is not always easy for people to fund training. Unless you have a pile of cash sitting, a lot of people will go through training, will stop, will run out of money, will take a break, will come back, and they've lost all the skills and knowledge that they acquired in the past, and they're repeating that process. So it can be very it can be a very expensive venture. So my recommendation to you is, before you get into training, consider how much money you have and consider how much of that money you can allocate to flight training, including your living expenses, including your feeding, transportation, and of course funding flight training itself. One of the recommendations I always give to people is, if a flight school promises that you'll be done in 6 months, well, add another 3 months to that. If the flight school says you'd only spend 50,000, well, add another 10,000 or 15,000 to that. If the flight school says, oh, you only need 10 hours, well, add another 3 hours to that. Things like that. Just always plan for the unexpected, because the reason is, these flight schools will always give you the best case expense budget, right? They won't give you the worst case. And some of them can be very honest and tell you right up front that, hey, things would happen, so plan for the weather going bad, maintenance, plan for you having a bad day as well, because it happens. So you have to plan for those unforeseen circumstances. The next reason that people would often drop out of school is time, especially if you have family and you have a full-time job that you do. Flight training can be time consuming. It's very easy when you're getting started to think, well, it's only, I only need to show up here 2 hours in a day and then I can go do whatever I need to do. And while that is true, over the course of your training, you would realize that it's not easy to, let's say, go for a 2-hour flight and then go from there to go do another work, because guess what? You have not even assimilated what you learned from that 2-hour flight, and now you've gone to do some other work that is probably mentally tasking, and guess what? You've not had time to rest, to digest, to understand what you learned, and now you've already forgotten it. So guess what? You come back tomorrow and it feels like you didn't even learn anything yesterday. And that is, of course, leads to that frustration of, am I wasting my money? Or should I just go and focus on what I'm doing? Or this is not for me, right? You start to give up. And that will cause people to pretty much give up and focus on what pays the bills at that moment. So having that dedicated time towards training is very vital, which can be tied to that money too, like I mentioned, because without money, you can train. And without you working, you can have the money to train. So you have to kind of plan in advance and hopefully dedicate the time needed to go through training. Another big reason why people give up on training, well, this one is a bit sensitive because I'm an instructor myself and I don't like to claim someone is a bad instructor. But there are bad instructors. That is just a simple fact. Just as how they are bad students. I don't like to say it, but that is also true. There are some students that won't study, won't open the books, but they show up and expect the instructor to pretty much open their head and put the book and the knowledge into them. It doesn't work like that. It's a two-way street. You both need to put in the effort. So let's talk about instructor for a second. The reason why the instructor can be a reason why students would drop out is just the fact that they feel like they're not being heard. The instructor is not probably giving them the time that they need, or the instructor is not passing on the information that they need at the time, right? And that will lead to a lot of students feeling empty at the end of the day. And like I said, money is going by as you go for all these flights, go for all these ground lessons. Your money is pretty much being taken away. So if you feel like your instructor is not giving you the time that you need or giving you the attention that you deserve, it is best to change, or at least talk to the instructor about it. Be open and honest with your instructor. I know that it is very easy for people to be a little fearful and have, because of the respect and the power, the dynamics between in the relationship of an instructor and a student, that can cause a lot of students to not want to talk. They don't want to be disrespectful. But you have to understand that your money is being spent here, and you have to be able to let your instructor know, hey, this is what is going on. I think this is where I'm having issues, but you're focusing on this other thing. So please, let's focus on what is important right now so that I can advance, right? I'll give you a good example. An instructor might say, oh yeah, let's go do all these flights so that we can come back and do this important thing. But this important flight that you haven't done will probably slow you down from going on a solo flight and so forth. And while it's okay to sometimes go out of your curriculum, out of order, you have to be very careful about that, because some instructors truly just want the hours and you don't want to be milked. Here's another important one that I believe that a lot of people fail to understand the importance of it, and that is having a plan, having a curriculum. In flight training in the US, you have the Part 61, you have 141, you have 142. Now, Part 61 is generally less structured. When you go through that type of training, you can kind of do whatever you want at whatever time you want with an instructor. Now, hopefully you have a good instructor that can guide you and set up your curriculum in an order that makes sense and can be beneficial to you. But sometimes when you have an instructor that is not organized, that would also lead to that frustration that I was talking about. Because what will happen is you do one lesson here, but then you jump to something that is not related to what you just learned. And what will happen is that you're learning all these bits of information that you cannot tie together, especially when you're first starting. Now, once you get advanced to maybe commercial and CFIs, yes, you can kind of move around because everything would eventually make sense. But at the beginning, you need that foundation to be solid, and you need to build on each block, which means each lesson should try to tie into the next, and that will help you to go smoothly in the training as you work towards getting your license. So having a plan that it makes sense and that can work is good. Part 141, on the other hand, is a type of structure that follows an FAA-approved syllabus, which means there's a curriculum that's been approved by the FAA for the school, and hopefully the school can do a good job adhering to the syllabus. Another big reason why a lot of people would sometimes drop out of training, which can be a bit difficult also, all of this are actually difficult, by the way, is medical. A lot of people would sometimes find out that something is wrong that will prevent them from being able to fly professionally, and that is a big reason for them to pull out of training. They don't want to spend all that money only to get to the end game, and they cannot actually get into the airline or work as a professional pilot. So I think that is self-explanatory. Always make sure that your medical is good. In line with medical is just the ability to stay in the air, motion sickness. Okay, this is something a lot of students will also suffer from because of the fact that they are just unable to be in a space where they can't understand where it's up or down, and they get sick, and that can sometimes put a lot of frustration in people, in which they are fine on the ground, but then they get in the air and they lose it. And that happened. I've actually seen one particular situation where the student dropped out personally because they kept trying and trying and trying. It just never worked. And that is something that it's kind of beyond your control. Your body does what it has to do, and unfortunately you can't change your bodies. I hope I've covered most of it. I'm sure I'm missing some, but this is something that I believe that have stood out to me over the course of time, excluding one, which is the biggest one, and that is laziness. Okay, laziness can be a reason why people drop out of training. I've seen this so many times where a student will start training, they will struggle, not that they don't have money, not that they don't have the motivation, but they just don't study. They don't put the effort into the training. And that would pretty much tell as they proceed down the line. So they end up going for check rides or state checks, and they fail, and they come back and they fail again. And eventually their training becomes very choppy. They repeat a lot of things. The instructor gets frustrated. They get frustrated. And eventually they just, give up. And that happens. So I hope that you can do what you have to do to achieve your goal and become the successful commercial pilot that you aim to be, if that's your goal. And if you haven't seen my video on the things to avoid if you want to become a professional pilot, you can check it out here.